Hey everyone, Suzy here from Adventurous Real Estate Investors. Today, I'm going to talk to you about who you work with matters, who you invest with matters, and why it's super important, right? Like what questions should you ask so that you can invest confidently with a sponsor? So this short video will give you some questions to think to yourself, to figure out what answers you kind of want out of it, and what you should just be asking everyone that you invest with, because there is a huge spectrum of people that you can invest with, right? Like everybody's offering deals in different states, everybody's offering deals in different cities. And so what beyond that, right? Like once you've figured out what area you want, if you're wanting more cash flow, if you're wanting appreciation, then how do you find the sponsor who provides that? So when you're getting to know this individual, I think one of the very, very first things, and this is more just through the conversation of getting to know them, it's not necessarily a question, but what are their morals and values as a sponsor, right? During the conversation with them, are they talking a lot about just profits and how they're going to drive profits?
I was never in this for the money. But it turns out that the money was an absolute necessity for me.
No! Or do they talk about how they're going to create an impact on the community, right? That is huge, because Michael and I personally always talk about the impact that we're going to make on the community, because we strongly believe that once you start to talk about people instead of just profits, the profits naturally come, right? Michael and I don't get into these situations where, oh, we just talk about people, right? It's not foo-foo like that. We have a business plan, but the business plan is all about the residents, because without residents, we don't have any apartments to invest in. And so just throughout the conversation that you're having with the sponsor, definitely think about that. So some questions to ask though. The first one is do you have any experience? Why should I trust you? That's huge, right? But we all come from a place where we started somewhere at the very beginning, right? So we've all been in that situation, but what education have they invested in? And it can all be self-taught. They don't have to go through a mentorship to have learned everything. There's so much education online and in books, and even just through an organic mentor, that's huge. And if they don't have a ton of experience, does anyone on their team have a lot of experience, right? Does this individual who hasn't taken down that deal yet, what was their experience in their professional life? Were they higher up within their organization? What did they do? Did they win awards? Were they volunteering? Just what experience do they have to be able to implement a business plan, right? And again, if it's not for them, or if they don't, who on their team does? And just talking about the people on the team, has anyone on their team taken a deal full cycle? If they haven't, that's totally okay. But then you can kind of ask the questions of from your projected returns, when you had that initial webinar, what were the returns at the end of the deal when you sold it, when it was dispositioned, when you refied, all of the above, right? Because some people like to stay into deals for 10 plus years. And so that's a long time to have been into a deal, but some people like to just be in them for the 3-year range. So kind of get a feeling about that, because it's also okay if somebody hasn't taken a cycle full deal. Another question that hits really deep is what challenges have you had? What challenges have you overcome, right? Because that's really where you learn about somebody's business. If somebody says they haven't had any challenges, I don't think they're being truthful, right? Or maybe they have only had their deal for one day. But the challenges are really where you get to know somebody, right? How did they overcome them? What did the team do? How did that affect the business plan? How did they communicate that with their investors? Because also without a passive investor, we also don't necessarily have a deal. And then to even go into communication, because I think communication is huge, right? Another question to ask is, how often are you going to be communicating with me, right? You say that you communicate monthly. Can you show me some previous communication that you've had? Or again, if somebody's never had a deal before, How do you plan on structuring your communication? What is it going to include? Something that I think is really important, besides just going like operations in CapEx, is that like putting in a variance table. So like for this month, you thought you were gonna get this much in income and be able to hit this amount in expenses. Like, how did it actually line up? And how are we year to date, right? Like that's huge, because then you can kind of see like the slow progression of it month to month. Another thing I love to add is a market update, right? Because although I love Oklahoma and all things Oklahoma, like I want my investors to know along the way, just like what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the market. So I always put a market update as well. The fifth and final question that kind of just goes along with, right, like who's on your team, the experience, full cycle, all the above, is like who is on your team? How did you meet them? What do you like about them? Like, do you guys complement each other? What do they bring to the team? Because then you can find out, like, even strategically, right? Because this team is who they're going to be implementing the business plan with for 3 to 7 to 10 years. Like, a lot goes into a partnership. It's really, really important to how a general partnership team picked their partners. So I think that's also a very, very important question to ask. So I'd love to chat with you more about this, right? I'd love to get to know you better. I'd love to see if we have an opportunity to work together. So if you just want to head to adventurous.com, schedule a call with Michael and I, right? Like, we'd love to learn together. We'd love to laugh together, just like learn more about one another. So I hope you found value in so much of this video and others. If you do, please smash that like button so that we know, and make sure to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on videos to come. So until next time, explore more. Adventure awaits. Woo!